I will now recognize the gentleman from Rhode Island, Mr. Langevin, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. I want to thank our witnesses for their testimony today. As we all know, there's no such thing as perfect cybersecurity. I've said that many times myself, including in our election systems. As such, we should expect that vulnerabilities will continue to be discovered within our election infrastructure moving forward. Yet, amidst a climate of rampant disinformation and outrageous lies about election security, I do fear that responsible disclosure of and communication about cybersecurity vulnerabilities in election infrastructure is becoming more and more challenging. So not all vulnerabilities, of course, will be equal in their severity or ease of exploitation, but their very existence could be manipulated to undermine public confidence in the integrity of election infrastructure and, by consequence, the outcome of an election itself. So to all of our witnesses, my questions are, how are state and local election officials thinking about communicating to the public about cybersecurity vulnerabilities in election systems in a way that preserves trust in those systems? And also, how can elements of the federal government, such as CISA, lend their support? And are there opportunities here for congressional action to help address this challenge as well?
Well, Congressman, I'll start, I suppose, if I may. In Ohio, we were the first state in the country to implement what's called a vulnerability disclosure policy. Effectively, we were asking the good guys, the white hat hackers, to find wherever we had a vulnerability and let us know about it. That's resulted in dozens of fixes that we've made. We found where our errors were and we fixed them. One thing, though, that I've struggled with and have wanted maybe some more help from the federal government on is being able to share our successes. When things go wrong, the public generally will know about it pretty quickly. But we haven't always been able to share our successes, and the public should know when we had a day where the good guys won and the bad guys lost. Oftentimes that means as quickly as possible declassifying what can be declassified without, of course, jeopardizing sources or methods, but giving us the chance to tell the stories of where we stopped the bad guys is something I'd like to be able to do more of.
Thank you. Next witness.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Member Langevin, I agree exactly with what my colleague from Ohio just said. I will say that when I first came into the Secretary of State's office in late 2016, obviously we had just gone through an election where many election officials across the country were not aware of what the federal government was aware of. And I think there's been a tremendous amount of work done working alongside CISA and DHS, the work that the Government Coordinating Council has done to try to figure out what is the right balance. Obviously, we want to be aware as soon as possible as chief election officials of any potential vulnerabilities. We want to address them immediately. We need that information yesterday, not tomorrow. I will say that I feel like the federal government has done a much better job about quickly declassifying or relaying appropriate directives to our offices. We're getting so much better about sharing that information with each other, but it is a delicate balance because we want to make sure once we've identified a vulnerability that we have a plan to fix it quickly, and that it is going to get the job done. And so a lot of the work we do is that very careful balance. We do need to make the public aware. That's incredibly important, but we also need to make sure we have those plans in place.
Thank you. And as a former Secretary of State myself, I understand the particular challenges that you all have. So thank you for the work you're doing. Let me shift to, since before my time has expired, Ms. Howard, if I could, in your testimony, you noted that despite federal efforts to make grant funding for programs such as Burn Justice Assistance Grant Program available for election security, none of these funds have yet been used for such purposes, and that election officials in at least one state have already had their request for Burn JAG funding denied. Could you and other witnesses with your insights here speak to some of the difficulties that election officials are experiencing in the application process for these grants? And, is there more the Department of Justice can do or other departments administrating the election security grants could do to help to get this money out? And if so, is the opportunity for congressional action here too?
Thank you for the question. Yes, there are now available to election officials are Homeland Grant Security Program funds. Just recently, the Department of Homeland Security reinstated election security as a priority. However, that prioritization was not accompanied with a minimum spend of those grants on election security. And what election officials are seeing and are concerned about is the fact that their needs are going to be deprioritized. These funds are not new, and many of the
Ms. Howard, I'm going to have to interrupt because we're 30 seconds over.